If you have decided to get on board the Alder Lake train, you will need a Z690 motherboard that can perfectly suit your needs. This is why you will need our reviews today. Primarily because picking the best 690 motherboard out of the dozens of available options on the market is not an easy task. Number 1. ASUS ROG Maximus 690 Hero. Any enthusiast-grade motherboard tier list would be incomplete without mentioning the ROG Maximus series from ASUS. This is the high-end motherboard category from ASUS that falls under the ROG banner, and for the 690 versions, ASUS has done away with confusing Roman numerals. Instead, they opted for the name of the chipset in the name of the product. What an ingenious thought! Still, the ROG Maximus 690 lineup of boards is among the best you will ever find on this chipset, and the Hero variant is the one we are particularly interested in. Packing a monstrous 20+1 VRM design with 90 power stages, the Maximus 690 Hero is more than enough for any Alder Lake CPU can throw at it, even at overclocked settings. In fact, we would recommend the Maximus 690 Hero for any potential buyers of the Core i9 12900K and the 12900KF, since those CPU have lots of overclocking potential that can be achieved using this fantastic 690 motherboard. The VRM is also cooled effectively by large heatsinks, so temperatures should be perfectly sound. The board also supports DDR5 memory at up to 6400 MHz speeds, but time will tell if investing in DDR5 right now is a good idea. Aesthetically, the board looks really impressive as you would expect from a Maximus series board. ASUS has gone for a sort of modernized look with the pixelated ROG script on the I/O cover and the ROG I on the chipset heatsink, which is also pixelated. These surfaces are finished in a glossy material so fingerprints would be quite visible. There is not much to comment on in terms of aesthetics since the board is mostly matte black and covered with heat spreaders, so there is barely any PCB visible. The I/O shield is built in, which is an excellent feature that is being standardized now. Number 2. Gigabyte 690 AORUS Master. Gigabyte's high-end AORUS motherboards recently have been absolutely fantastic for both platforms, so it is no surprise that the Gigabyte 690 AORUS Master ends up as our pick for the best high-end 690 motherboard. It has an excellent power delivery system that is almost a necessity for the new Alder Lake CPU, but it also has an excellent feature set that is comparable with some of the most expensive 690 motherboards out there. The AORUS Master itself isn't cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but its pricing is not outrageous in view of what it brings to the table. Starting off with the highlight of this board, the extremely overbuilt VRM. It consists of a staggering 22 phases, out of which 19 supply the CPU with 105 of power. This is an insane VRM setup that will almost never be completely utilized, even by a fully overclocked 12900K running 24/7. This VRM design is truly ahead of its time due to the fact that any Alder Lake CPU and even possibly the next upcoming Intel 13th Gen flagship is probably not enough to saturate the VRM of the 690 motherboard. The VRM heatsinks are also quite sizable, so the board should have no problems dissipating the heat that is coming out of those VRM. As far as looks are concerned, the AORUS Master is certainly one of the most over-the-top boards out there. It doesn't have any fancy gold accents, but it has massive heatsinks and heat shields that cover up around 95% of the PCB itself. The I/O cover has a large RGB AORUS logo and some lighting accents which look cool, and a similar style continues down to the chipset heatsink, which has a glitched AORUS logo. This modern design language seems to be rampant in the 690 motherboards. Speaking of the heatsink, the chipset heatsink sort of extends over the entire bottom half of the PCB and serves as the heatsink for the M.2 drives as well. This is a very ingenious implementation. We really have no reason to doubt the AORUS Master 690 motherboard when it comes to features. It is absolutely jam-packed with top-of-the-line features such as the DDR5 memory support for up to 6400 MHz stands. There are 11 USB ports on the I/O, including 2 USB-C ones. However, the main feature is the 10GB LAN port on the back from AORUS. This, paired with the 2 Wi-Fi 6E antennas adjacent to it, means that you will be absolutely spoiled by choice when it comes to connectivity. PCIe Gen 5 is also supported, and the board has 4 M.2 drives as well for your storage needs. Clearly, AORUS understands what kind of user is looking to buy this 690 motherboard at this price point. Speaking of M.2 drives, you might also be interested in our review of the XP Giganix S50 Lite PCIe Gen 4 SSD. Number 3. MSI MPG Z690 Carbon Wi-Fi. MSI has made some excellent boards over the past few years, especially for the AMD chipsets, but they have not exactly ignored Intel either. MSI MPG series, which stands for MSI Performance Gaming, packs some of the most overbuilt and premium motherboards out there for any chipset, be it Intel or AMD. Continuing this trend for the new Alder Lake platform, we have the MSI MPG Z690 Carbon Wi-Fi, a fantastic high-end motherboard on the Z690 platform that is quite possibly the best overclocking Z690 motherboard on our list. It certainly rivals our two top picks in terms of VRM design and features. Speaking of the power delivery, MSI has hit the nail on the head with an 18+1+1 phase VRM design with 75 power stages, which is excellent for overclocking pretty much any modern CPU you can put in it. Particularly, the Core in an E12900K would be a great match for this 690 motherboard since you can completely max out the overclock on the flagship Alder Lake CPU without taxing the VRM too much. In terms of heat dissipation, MSI has provided massive VRM heatsinks that are actually fin to increase the metal surface area, aiding in dissipation. The board supports DDR5 memory up to a whopping 6,666 MHz, which sounds really fast by today's standards. But time will tell if speeds like this are normalized. The I/O cover has a really cool MSI dragon that illuminates in every color of the rainbow as one would expect. The whole board has this really unique, angular pattern that is definitely in tune with the 2022 design language. The looks of the board will certainly not disappoint you unless you have a particular issue with dragons. Number 4. ASUS ROG Strix 690A. Since the Maximus series is not something that everyone can or should buy, ASUS has also released several mid-range and entry-level motherboards on the Z690 platform. The ASUS ROG Strix 690 is one of the more mid-range boards that also has lots of great features and a pretty decent VRM design. The standard ROG series also comes with a choice among DDR5 and DDR4 memory configurations, so be sure to purchase the board that supports the specific memory type that you plan to run. The power delivery system of the ASUS ROG Strix 690 is certainly not on the same level as the ones mentioned before, but that does not mean that it is bad by any stretch. ASUS has packed a 16+1 phase VRM for the Z690A, which is pretty decent by modern standards. The VRM cooling is also adequate as ASUS has provided quite large VRM heatsinks with diagonal fins to maximize heat dissipation. Perhaps the most attractive feature of the ASUS ROG Strix 690 is its design and appearance. Thanks to its sizable white heatsinks and I/O cover, the board is clad beautifully in white. The RGB design and the Strix script on the I/O cover are absolutely sublime, giving a glassy appearance that would go perfectly in many RGB systems. The chipset heatsink is also white, and it extends over the PCIe Gen 4 M.2 drive slots as well to a certain extent. You can see a bit of the black PCB, but that still doesn't take anything away from the looks of this board. The 690 from ASUS is our pick for the best looking 690 motherboard out there. Number 5. MSI Pro Z690 Wi-Fi. MSI Pro series of motherboards has been synonymous with value for a while now, and the trend carries on with the MSI Pro Z690 motherboards. There are actually 4 different motherboards under the same name, but all 4 of them are the same PCB differentiated only by the 2 variables of Wi-Fi and DDR generation. In this particular roundup, we recommend the MSI Pro Z690 DDR5 Wi-Fi motherboard as it still offers a great price-to-performance ratio despite having a higher price than the DDR4 and non-Wi-Fi variants. When we talk about value-oriented motherboards, we have to be reasonable with our expectations when it comes to power delivery and VRM design. The MSI Pro Z690 motherboard packs a decent 8+4 phase VRM that will be great for most regular users buying a motherboard in this price bracket. The VRM should be able to handle a Core i5-12600K at its highest overclock, but it should also be able to handle some light overclocking on its Core i5 brother. When it comes to looks, the MSI Pro Z690 is as basic as they come. It is just a massive chunk of black PCB with black heatsinks in various places. This is one area where MSI has disappointed us since several boards are cheaper than this one that look way better than the Pro Z690A. MSI has also not included any RGB lighting on the board, which is a bummer if you build a PC in 2022. It is not as feature-rich as some of the other boards on this list, understandably, but it has everything a regular gamer might want from a Z690 motherboard. There is no built-in I/O shield, but the rear I/O itself is decent with a nice selection of USB ports and a 2.5 GB LAN port along with Wi-Fi capability if you choose that particular motherboard variant.